Pacer Nation, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode here of Setting the Pace, your go-to Pacers podcast. Unfortunately, we have to talk about the Pacers' first loss of the season as they fall 112 to 105 at home to the Chicago Bulls. And joining me to talk about this game is the highly upset Michael J. Facci. Facci, at least you didn't have to deal with the Bally Sports app tonight.
No, I didn't. Heard enough people in my mentions that had to deal about it. Guys, I'm sorry about that. I don't know if anyone thought I worked for Bally or not, but guys, I'm sorry. But yeah, as it relates to the game, I'm disappointed. I'm not going to lie. I thought this was a good opportunity for the Pacers to keep this winning streak going and win another one at home. They had been so elite offensively that we kind of probably took it for granted and said, hey, you know what? We really got to shape up defensively. And yeah, I guess tonight they did, but where was the offense, Alex?
Yeah, honestly, let's just put it in perspective here. The Pacers took 88 shots tonight. 46 of them are from three. So over half their shots are from three.
Wow.
They made 12. When you shoot such a poor percentage, 26.1% from three, and that's over half your shot attempts, then the results of a bad offensive outbreak is what's going to happen. So the Pacers really struggled offensively in this game. I thought that Chicago controlled the entire pace of the game. Indiana is best when they're able to get out and play a faster tempo, but Chicago, they've got some half-court killers with DeRozan, Levine, and Vooch, and they played the style of play they wanted to play, whereas the Pacers weren't able to get out and run. And this is, I think, where we're running into the biggest problem with this Pacers team. When they're playing their style of basketball, it's a fun brand of basketball to watch. But when they have to adjust and adapt and play someone else's half-court style, it can be very tricky because they don't have a low post presence and
Very true.
they don't have anybody that really can create their own offense and get to the basket. Tyrese can do it at times, but Ben Mathurin's their best player to do that. Other than that, a lot of these guys are more beneficiaries of playing fast and passing the ball. So I felt like this is where we really got to see, okay, stylistically versus some teams, the Pacers are going to struggle.
Yeah, no, it's true. And we had seen certain performances through the first two games that unfortunately you can't count on, whether
Yeah.
it was Bruce Brown scoring 24 points, on the first night, Aaron Nesmith scoring 26 points against the Cavs. Those are performances that are not going to be there every game. So it's a matter of who else is going to step up. And I think that, the Pacers were looking for a little bit more production off the bench tonight compared to last game. And the bench was massive against Cleveland. That was not really the case tonight. I think the bench kind of struggled a bit, and obviously, part of that is losing Jalen Smith in this game. I don't believe that we've heard anything yet.
No.
So I mean, we'll touch on him later. But I thought the bench was so good against Cleveland that tonight it felt like it was the starters that kind of carried the load a little bit, and we felt that because the bench had been elite so far.
Yeah, I'll say this. The Pacers decided to go with a 9-man rotation again, like they did in the first game. No TJ McConnell. And with the way the game was going, I was kind of surprised we didn't see Rick go to TJ just to try to get some half-court offense because
I agree.
these are the kind of games that TJ McConnell thrives in. And I'm not sitting here saying, oh, TJ McConnell needs to be in the game every single time because I understand why they have a tough call with him not being in the rotation. But this was a game where I felt like he can go in there, provide some energy, provide some defense. He's got a chip on his shoulder to prove why he should be out there getting minutes. And we know that little floater that he hits, that little turnaround jumper, it's one of the best weapons this offense has in the half court. They really should have considered going to him a little bit more instead of playing Bruce Brown out there because I felt like there was enough offensive or lack of offensive talent on Chicago's second unit where you could have easily found someone for McConnell to guard that maybe have been a little bit bigger than him, like an Ayo Dosunmu. I think he would have been able to find a way to be effective in that matchup defensively.
Yeah, I think this is, maybe it's easy looking back, but there was definitely an opportunity for TJ McConnell in this game. I felt that he could have brought a spark, and I just think that the bench kind of struggled overall tonight. And it's not that you need McConnell's scoring, but his playmaking had been fantastic. TJ McConnell actually doesn't have a turnover yet on the year. It's 10 assists, 0 turnovers.
Yeah.
I think that he's just been a spark for the Pacers. And, I mean, Jalen Smith was +2, but if you go through the rest of the bench, I mean, Nesmith was -15, Nembhard, Buddy, -2 each. I just feel that McConnell was someone who was, I believe, +21 last game. So was other people off the bench. But that is a good point by you that I think that Pacers are going to have to consider that TJ McConnell, at times, he's too good to just not make an appearance.
Well, and it's just I think it's got to be the right timing, and there's cases where he doesn't need to play, and you can
Mhm.
have the 9-man rotation and it work fine. But I felt like in a game like this where things were mucked up a lot, this is the kind of game that TJ McConnell thrives in. He's just one of those scrappy guys, gets out there, and it's a division game. And I think that when you are familiar with playing a division foe, it goes back and forth. Like we've seen this version of the Bulls for the last 3 to 4 years now, and they've given us problems. We've seen, I think it was the DeMar DeRozan game winner on
Oh,
New
on
Year's
New Year's.
Eve
Yep.
that just put a dagger in the heart. But then last year, the Pacers won the last 3 games against Chicago, as Chicago kind of went through the same thing the Pacers went to 2 years ago. So I feel like this version of Chicago, like they're a talented squad. And if you let them hang around long enough with DeRozan, with Levine, they're going to be able to just knock some points in there in the fourth quarter and get to their spots. Because I felt like you look in the third quarter, their numbers, field goal wise, percentage was not great. They weren't really doing a whole lot. Vooch really did have a good game in this one.
He
And
did.
I felt like he kind of controlled some things there. But when you look at the way they were playing with DeRozan and Levine in the fourth quarter, like the Pacers were bad in the fourth quarter. They had their worst offensive outing in the fourth, and they had their worst defensive outing in the fourth. It was like all game long we had kept them under 30, and then the fourth quarter we give up 30 points. So it's like that's not going to be a recipe for success.
No, it's not. I believe the Pacers ended up shooting, I want to say it was either 6 of 22 or 6 of 23 in the fourth quarter. I mean, just not going to get the job done against anybody.
Yeah.
But also, and you talk about Vooch, I mean, finishes with 24 points, 17 rebounds. The guy had 8 points and 6 rebounds in the first quarter. It looked like he was on pace to have a double-double early on. That can't happen. I just felt that too many times, 5 offensive rebounds, and it hurt the Pacers very,
Yeah.
very much. But one thing that we got to point out is one thing the Pacers did so well. They were through 2 games leading the NBA in protecting the ball. Just about 10
Yeah.
turnovers per game. They had 17 turnovers. They actually started the game turning over the first 2 possessions of the game, which already made me be like, oh, I don't know. Something feels a little bit different. And I know it was early on. Didn't want to be too pessimistic. But in the end, 17 turnovers. You're not going to beat that many teams when you're not protecting the ball and you're not shooting it well. We discussed those shooting numbers. I mean, 12 of 46 from 3. Whoa. Chicago, they shot 6 of 17. At least they knew what their limitations were.
Yeah.
And they only put up 17. We put up nearly 30 more 3-pointers than Chicago. Think about that.
Well, that's the thing. Like they took 70 of their shots inside the 3-point line. So they know who they are. They've got an identity and they play to their strengths. Like we talked about earlier, the Pacers know their identity, but they weren't able to play to their strengths because Chicago did control that. But yeah, and that's part of the reason why they had so many turnovers. Like I think I tweeted it out after Adrian Nembhard had a great left-handed pass to Jalen Smith where he threaded the needle. It was like a beautiful pass. He ended up having like 4 turnovers directly after that. Sailed the
One
next play.
sailed deep into the stands.
Yeah,
I was
like 5 to 7 rows deep in the stands,
yeah.
and he just kind of was like, "Man, that slipped out of my hands." Okay, that's a fluke thing, you think, and then he ends up trying to be a little too, I would say, cute with the basketball, trying to thread the needle a couple more times, and just really wasn't a window there for him to get the ball through. And he turned the ball over a couple more times, and they rightfully had to pull him out. It was just a game that was a bit of a struggle for him there, and he had some rough stretches, but he had some good stretches too, like the play where Jalen Smith in the first quarter blocked the shot. Andrew Nembhard saved it from going out of bounds, and he throws it all the way past half court to Tyrese, who finds Jalen Smith cutting to the basket on the fast break and rewards him with the layup. It was just like little things like that were really fun to kind of see at the beginning. And, me and you both felt like, okay, Chicago is a team they're 1-2 coming into tonight. Not a great team, but they're a capable team. But it felt like this was a great opportunity for the Pacers to start 3-0 for the first time in a long time, go to Boston with some momentum, and just see if they can carry over that momentum from that game Saturday where Tyrese Halliburton was chirping with the fan on the sidelines. And it unfortunately did not go that way. But I felt like this was a game the Pacers should have won. They could have won. And they're going to be kicking themselves a little bit for letting this one slip away.
I think they will. I think it's going to be a little bit of a reality check to say, hey, guys, we're not all the way there yet. We got to play a complete game of basketball. And I thought they had got out to a better start in the first quarter. They let up 27 points instead of like the 38 that they had been giving up in the first. I thought they played a much better third quarter. So we saw they only let up 25.
Yeah.
But offensively, it was just such a far cry from what we had seen that I think this will be a good wake-up call. And I really do think they're going to get up to play Boston because they're a contender. That's a league. If you want to think of yourself as being a playoff team, hey, Boston's a team that you might play in the first round if you make it. So I think they'll get up for that game. But this was this was a bit of a letdown, and it's unfortunate. I think there was a couple calls at the end of the game.
Let me talk to you about that officiating. What'd you think about the officiating overall?
I didn't like it. I didn't like it. This was a very sloppy game that had there was a lot of whistles, but towards the end of the game, I truly believe that was not a foul on Alex Caruso. I really do not think so. Caruso stepped on Nemhard's foot. I thought
a foul on Nemhard.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I mean, okay. A foul that should not have sent Caruso to the line.
Gotcha.
Rick challenges it. I thought that was the right thing to do of challenging it. Pacers don't win that. Okay. Then all of a sudden, you think Buddy gets fouled. There was not a foul, but I don't think that he had enough room to land. I think DeRozan was crowding him. I don't want to be the homer over there.
Yeah, I'm like it.
What I just hate is that it came down to 2 reviews and we lost both of them. It was like, you think you might split the reviews, whatever it was. I was going through a ton of emotions, being dragged back and forth. In the end, the Pacers could not overcome, any of the last attempts in that last final minute of the game. There was a lot of back and forth. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I texted you. We were down like 7 with like 40 seconds to go. I was like, all right, what time do you want to target recording? Of course, Pacers start to come back a little bit. You're like, when the game's over, it's like, okay, obviously,
that's but it was going to be anyway.
Yes, but it just
I'm never going to record before the final buzzer. Just telling you. Right
what I meant was like, are we doing right after the game, or do you need like 5-10 minutes to grab a snack? Like, what might it be? But in the end, the Pacers, they dragged us back and forth, but they could not come back from that deficit.
Yeah, I definitely felt like the Caruso, the foul call on Nembhard there to send Caruso to the line. I thought it was 50-50 if we'd win or not. It was interesting. Chicago's broadcast felt like he got bailed out on that one as well. Yeah. So, yeah, it probably wasn't, but I don't think there was enough to overturn it. Now, I disagree on the Buddy Hield one. Unfortunately, Buddy Hield, that was just him trying to draw contact on the 3 in front of the bench. He knew it.
Definitely wasn't touched.
No, he was not touched. That was the correct over call on that one. But I did not like them giving Zach LaVine the timeout on that jump ball there at the half-court line between him and Nembhard, because he really didn't have enough time to have possession of the ball to be rewarded the timeout. I think we see that a lot of times where officials constantly give the benefit of the doubt to the offensive player and give them the timeout way too early before they really do maintain full possession of a basketball. So it was interesting to kind of see that little scuffle there happen. The Pacers end up getting a technical free throw shot because LaVine was called for a tech because he didn't like that Nembhard ended up pulling the ball away from him there after they called the timeout and got in his face. Well, then Halliburton misses a technical free throw. Like, that was just the kind of night it was. When he missed that technical free throw, I said, okay, that's just the kind of night this is going to be. The officiating, it was not great. I'll totally agree with fans on that one, but I don't think it was the reason why this team lost. No. At the end of the day, the Pacers made too many mistakes, and they showcased why they have to improve their half-court offense, and I don't know what they can do to improve that, but, not trying to go back too many years, but, like, this is the difference between, like, having, like, an Oladipo and a Sabonis, that you don't have those kind of players on the team anymore. You couldn't play this fast pace with those two guys, the style that we played back then, but they were able to kind of slow things down a little bit and get you some half-court offense. And I think now, like, we have a really fun style that we play, but we're just missing an extra piece, I think, that can really help us get points in the half-court. Now, I would love to see Mathurin develop into that and be like, quote-unquote, our DeMar DeRozan for this Pacers team to kind of get you some half-court offense when you need it. And I think he's on the trajectory to becoming that. But it's just tough right now because I think that this team is still trying to get a feel for one another. Obi Toppin, it was kind of a weird way that they played him. I think he ended up having the best plus-minus for the Pacers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, +9. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, he showed some good things there. I'm surprised they didn't go back to him a little bit more just to bring some athleticism out there. But, yeah, because Aaron Nesmith, like, he had a great game against the Cavs, but he did struggle a little bit offensively tonight.
Fouled out as well. I just think it was just kind of a rough night for Nesmith, and there'll be those highs and lows, but he obviously brings a lot to this team that want to have to count on, well, if Neesmith doesn't drop 20 plus points, I don't know. It's just he's not going to be that type of player for the Pacers.
Yeah.
And it's good. But for Obi Toppin, rebounded well, finished with 8 rebounds. He did have 4 early in the first quarter, but he did some good things, had a great putback slam. That was awesome to see. But for Mathurin, we touched on it, 15 points. He went 6 of 6 from the free throw line. 4 of 11 from the field. I thought he had a stretch. I don't know. I guess it was in the fourth quarter where he was being more aggressive. He was, getting some foul calls, was making some baskets, but I just think that he battled foul trouble early on. Three fouls in the first half. Then they kind of took him out of it a little bit. But we talked about it a little bit. Jalen Smith. I think he banged knees, and we did not see him return.
Yeah.
And I think that the Pacers really could have used him because Vucevic was just kind of he was getting to work in that fourth quarter. And I feel that Jalen never returned. I hope that everything's all right. I look forward to seeing some sort of update. But the Pacers also avoided when Benedict Mathurin took that tumble.
Yeah, that was scary.
Right into the basket. I think that could have been some whiplash, neck, shoulder, anything like that could have happened. He shook it off, was down for a little bit, hit the 2 free throws. It was good to see that everything's all right. But if the Pacers had potentially lost Jalen Smith and Mathurin, what would have been the Pacers' strength of depth would have disappeared real quick.
Yeah, I mean, that is where their strength of depth does come into play a little bit, because then you throw McConnell in there, then maybe you throw in a Daniel Tyson there, and you feel like, okay, we're not taking that much of a step back because we do have players that are capable to fill the void of those guys. You're not relying on like rookies or guys that are unseasoned veterans to come in there and play those minutes, kind of like Cleveland had to do with Amani Bates getting in there with their second unit on Saturday night. But I understand what you're saying. The whole entire thing with Mathurin was really nerve-wracking, though. When he landed on that stanchion, he hit it pretty hard.
Oof.
And he laid down for a minute, and I was like, I hope he's not in concussion protocol after this, because that was a big hit. And he came down and knocked 2 free throws down. Levine ended up scoring a basket, and then he scored immediately after that. They kind of had some moments where they were trading buckets back and forth, and I thought, okay, let's see what he can do. And then after that, we really didn't see Mathurin get too much more involved with the offense. So it's a learning process for this Pacers team. They're young. We know we were going to go 82-0. I had somebody today at work ask me if they were going to go 82-0. And I said, yeah, why not? I mean, obviously I know they're not going to, but I didn't want to get stuck in a long conversation about the Pacers. So I said, yeah, why not? I kept it moving. But the biggest thing here, I'm looking at the stats from the game, Facci. They ended up getting, I think it was about 6 more free throw attempts than us.
Yep.
That's a lot compared when you lose by 7. And then you look at the points in the paint. They outscored us by 10 in points in the paint, held us to just 17 fast break points. They only had 13 turnovers. We had 17, like you mentioned earlier. So it was really just like one of those games where you're going to forget about it. You're going to move on. You're going to be excited about Boston. Maybe this loss does give the Pacers some extra energy to refocus and get ready for that tough matchup against a Eastern Conference favorite in Boston. And maybe they go there and prove to Boston that they're not messing around and that they're a tough team to play, because Boston, I think last year we played pretty good against them.
We did. We might have only won 1 game, but we really pushed them in quite a few. So we gave Boston definitely a big challenge last year. And I'm really excited to see this, because I do think the Pacers will get up to say, okay, this isn't just any game. I mean, not to put a knock on Chicago, but they might have overlooked them tonight. I do not think they will overlook Boston. I think it could, if anything, maybe be the other way around. But this same Boston team knows what the Pacers brought to him last year. But another thing I want to touch on, we have been complimenting so much of the ball movement, the assists. The Pacers were averaging, I believe it was 37 assists in the first 2 games, just 26 tonight. Normally 26 could be solid for many teams, but the ball movement had been, out of this world lately. So I think that that's something that you look at and you're like, oh, man, it kind of came down to earth a bit, despite Tyrese Halliburton having 13 assists. I just feel that McConnell was someone who, whether it was 8 assists last game or Nembhard having 10 assists in game 1, I just felt that there were other playmakers in the first 2 games. Tonight it was just Tyrese Halliburton. No one else had more than 4 assists, and the guy at 4 was Buddy Hield.
Yeah, and I felt like Buddy kind of struggled early on too, and he got his rhythm after having a rough 2 to 3 minute stretch to start his little whenever he came into the game, his part of the rotation. But Real quick, as we kind of wrap things up here, Rick Carlisle after the game said, "We got seduced a little bit into their pace and their tempo. Thought that their guys played hard, but they just didn't play as well." So not too much criticism from Carlisle. Bruce Brown followed up and said, "I think we missed shots. It's going to happen. Don't think we played up to our speed." So kind of what we talked about. They just didn't get into the style of play they wanted to play, and Chicago dictated everything. And when you get into a rock fight, Facci, unfortunately, that's what's going to happen. So if we were to say the good, the bad, and the ugly, I would say the good. You have anything? They played hard.
I mean, for the good, yeah, played hard, I guess. Yeah, I mean, they didn't roll over and die. I would say they fought towards the end, just didn't work out. But this one was a little bit more of the bad and ugly. And there's no way to sugarcoat it. That's just how it was. The Pacers scored 105 points after being the team that led the NBA in scoring through the first two games. They had scored 143 against Washington, 125 against Cleveland, and now just 105. I'm not going to be the guy who's saying, if anything, we peaked in game one and kind of came down from there, because it's a long season of play. But I think defensively, took a step forward. I guess maybe part of that is that this is Chicago, but incomplete game for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode. We're going to do a little stock up, stock down for you guys after 3 games into the season. Going to try and make that a weekly show, maybe just do it as a segment, but we're going to do it as a show by itself for Halloween. So hope you guys are out having a great time doing that. But Facci, go ahead and let people know where they can find us at on social media.
Absolutely. So you can find us on Twitter at PacersPod STP. You can find Alex on Twitter at AlexGoldenNBA. I can be found on Twitter at _FACCI. You can find us on Instagram at PacersPod STP. You can find us on Facebook at Setting the Pace. You can find us on TikTok at Setting the Pace. And Alex, tell them where they can check us out on YouTube.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already, subscribe to us on YouTube at youtube.com/Setting the Pace, a Pacers podcast, where you will find all of our post-game video recaps up and available for you to hear what happened in the game. And if you haven't already, please check out the blueandgolden.substack.com. Subscribe to my work, which is absolutely 100% free. And I will be doing a segment pretty much on there every post game, doing a 10 things about the game that stood out to me. You'll hear some of that on the podcast, maybe some that I don't bring up, but definitely want to keep that consistency going of 10 things for each game. So you're going to get a lot of thoughts from me after the games on there. But with that being said, Facci, if you're excited for the Pacers to bounce back after a tough loss against the Bulls and surprise the world against Boston, then hit me with those 3 words.
Let's go, Pacers!